Hi everyone. Very good evening to one and all. Welcome to the second conversation that we have planned for you as a part of Nestle Leaders League. In the first conversation with our chairman and managing director, we intended to share some life lessons from the man himself. These are series of sessions where you can borrow some life experiences out of Nestle leaders. We have picked a very interesting thought today. While most of you would have interacted with Nestle products in your lifetime, seen ads, communications, and campaigns, I'm sure all of you would often wonder what is the thought that goes behind it. And who better to sort of address this thought than Rajat Jain? If I can have Rajat on the screen, please. Rajat, in his current role, is the director for the foods business of Nestle India. He has more than 16 years of experience. He, in fact, joined us as a management trainee. He's worked across various categories, including chocolates, confectioneries, mints, noodles. He has led 7 brands in his course with Nestle. In all of this, he has had a rich experience in building brands, in accelerating growth, and orchestrating business turnaround. So, long story short, he is the man behind Maggi as we know it today, and he is here to tell you how to build iconic brands and campaigns. So, feel free to ask away your questions in the live chat, and we will try and address all of them. And that's about it from me, Rajat. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Akshata, and good evening, everybody. What a pleasure it is to be with you today. This is the highlight of my work life. Normally, to be able to talk to and have a chat with young managers. Potentially, some of you will look at Nestle as a prospective employee. Potentially, some of you will work with us on Maggi, or Nescafe, or KitKat as our iconic brands go. And what better way to connect than to be able to do so in more or less a conversation format, in a format where we listen to each other, where we try and answer some of the questions you've shared with us very generously. And in doing so, we are able to help each other understand a little bit better about the world of marketing, about the world of food, and what is very dear to me personally, the world of Maggie. So Akshita has already introduced me very generously. I have been here 17 years. And I'm very proud to say that this is the only company I've ever worked for. I started with no managerial experience before I started in the management training program at Nestle. I've had the pleasure of working on several brands in marketing and a couple of roles in sales. And we will talk a little bit about my experience and my journey. That's essentially what it is. It's a journey, and along the journey, I have picked up some useful tips and some lessons on what makes campaigns iconic and what makes brands become iconic brands and loved brands. Akshata is generous in saying I'm the man behind Maggie. I'm not. I have a fancy designation. That's all. There are thousands of men and women behind Maggie who make it possible every day. We will share a bit of those stories with you today as well. We have planned for some time for question and answers over and above what we've tried to do in the deck. Please feel free to put your comments, your questions, your observations, your feedback, your ideas in the chat box. We will try and address most of those. I must say that I took a look at the original set of questions that came in. We have more than 100 questions that you wanted to ask. We've organized them in a few themes, and we will begin and address them in themes as we go in the session. So, Akshita, we can start with the deck whenever possible, please. Thank you. What are we curious about today? We are curious about iconic campaigns from Costume and FMS. There's an anonymous question on the brand manager's vision. It's true. A brand manager's vision is there on iconic campaigns. Yash from IML has asked us about the Maggie comeback. We will touch upon that. I have a personal story to share on that comeback. Our vision for the foods business at Nestle going ahead from Nishant and I am Bangalore. This is an important theme, and we will talk a little bit about the future as well. Dhriti from IMK. One growth driver for Maggie has always been the lack of people's culinary skills. Actually, not true, and we will talk about how it is the opposite. It is because people have cooking skills and culinary skills that Maggie is such a big brand and such a loved brand in the country. Remember, Maggie has to be cooked before it can be enjoyed and consumed. Yes, consumers are becoming very conscious about sustainable packaging from Tanvi and XLRI. This is a subject very dear to my heart personally, and we will share a few examples on how we've gone. Next slide, please. At the center of it all is this one phrase, and if you forget everything else that I tell you today, it is remember this thing about Nestle. Nestle, when it comes to management trainees in sales and marketing, is all about early responsibility, and early responsibility in not just leading iconic brands but also leading businesses. These few brands that you see on the left were the first 6 years of my career at Nestle. After about a year and a half in sales in Gujarat, I was very fortunate to start with the sugar confectionery business. That little eclairs that you see on the top left hand of the slide is a 50 paisa eclair. We did not have a manufacturing facility for it, so we were co-manufacturing it with a partner. And I was 2 years out of business school, and my responsibility was to run the entire P&L, including the relationship with this co-manufacturer. Extremely valuable life lesson on how to use relationships to create business value for all stakeholders. I got a chance to work on Munch. This was at that time our largest chocolate brand. Very, very iconic work that had happened using Rani Mukherjee as an endorser. And my task was to move away from the endorsement. Very early, I learned how to make a brand stand on its own 2 feet and not rely on brand endorsers. There was a question in the list on why does Maggie not use so many celebrities anymore. It also comes in part to my personal belief that brands should use celebrities to make a point, and there's a thin line between the celebrities helping the brand and the celebrities becoming the brand themselves. And we try and stay on the right side of that line. I then got a chance to work on a turnaround for Maggie sauces. Maggie sauces is a very important part of our portfolio. Iconic lines like Maggie Hot and Sweet, it's different. The ketchup business, which is very powerful in India. I failed at turning around the Maggie soups business. I'm not particularly proud of a failure, but this is a failure that I look back very often and I ask myself, what could I have done better? In a sense, I could have done better is to realize that the market is just not large enough for more than two players to exist. And instead, I kept trying to use formula of success for many other brands. And in the end, this is one of the failures that cost us a lot of money, is a very big lesson for me personally on what not to do when trying to do a turnaround. Next clip, please. We talk about the Maggie crisis a bit. This is a picture from 4th June 2015. Most of you may not know. This is the date on which our chairman, Mr. Paul Bulke, who was the CEO at the time for Nestle globally, was in India, and he announced that we'll be withdrawing Maggie. I was in the office cafeteria at the time. I was in a sales role, and I was having Maggie for lunch while the whole world was asking us many questions about Maggie noodles. And I posted instinctively with hashtag Thenga, not realizing that this is going to be one of those iconic rebuilds back as we withdrew the brand. Very, very big learning for me as a leader. I was leading a team of 600 people at the time, and all of these people were relying on Nestle and on Maggie for their livelihoods. To lead a team of people during a phase where we were not really sure what's going to happen every day in the morning, but yet to show up and to do our part was a very important leadership lesson for me. It is that leadership lesson, next please, Akshata, that gives me the confidence to lead Maggie today. I'm responsible for the Maggie and the foods business in India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. This is one of our most loved brands in the country. Our rankings have been steadily improving. As of 2020, we are the 13th most loved brand. By some accounts, we are the most loved brand for many audiences, and the confidence to run this comes from the rich experience I have in Nestle leading iconic brands very early in my career in this company. What do we do when we show up on a given morning? Next slide, please, Akshita. On any given day when we come to work, we have to anchor ourselves to a purpose. At Nestle, the purpose is that we are the good food, good life company, that we unlock the power of food to enhance quality of life, and we do this for everyone today and for generations to come. Somebody had a question on how do you make a decision on which products to launch under Maggie and which products to not. And the simple yardstick we choose is this product under Maggie going to help somebody cook the fresh food they love and believe in every day? Is this product going to enhance quality of life? Is this product going to help us become a force of good for today and for generations to come? And if the answer to these questions is yes, then Maggie has a width and strength enough to be able to absorb these products. And so, in that sense, it becomes a very simple decision to make. Next slide, please, Akshata. Some of the questions around what is really is life like behind the scenes in Maggie. All Maggi managers and in fact all Nestle managers are constantly trying to balance the long term and the short term. And we are business managers and not brand managers from the very early days of our career at Nestle. Continuous learning is a big part of life at Nestle and life at Maggi. This is a picture from a leadership day that we spent training with horses, and this was a full day spent with horses to understand that when you're trying to engage with a horse and when you're trying to influence a horse, then your designation, the car you drive, the amount of money you have in the bank, your position in society, your position in the company, the hierarchy you hold has no value for the horse. All the horse cares about is how authentic you are as a leader. And this kind of learning is continuously ingrained in us at Nestle and in Maggi. Of course, a lot of our life in Maggi is spent eating Maggi. It is a lot of Maggi. It's a part of my day that I look forward to. I encourage you to check out our recipes on Maggi.in. Some really nice recipes for you to try your cooking skills on. Next slide, please. What is it that brand managers get influenced by when they have to make decisions about campaigns? There was a question on how really does a brand manager start? And the simple question that we try and answer is what is the role we play in life? And these are some pictures that are very obvious to most of you who know Maggi and who love Maggi and consume Maggi noodles. Maggi noodles is more than just a hunger fill. Maggi noodles very often is a pick me up when we are busy studying. It's a moment of bonding for a mother and kid. Very often it's a life skill. It is the product that you learn to cook for the first time. And when you understand these nuances and when you understand that the role you play in life is beyond the functional role of, in this case, filling up the stomach, which is what frankly every food product can do, then the campaign that you do is an outcome of which aspect do you want to amplify today. So the decision becomes very easy. Stay true to your purpose, know really well what role you fulfill, and just activate the campaign that's most relevant at that time. Next slide, please. There was a comment on health and how consumers are becoming very health conscious. Yes, they are. The important thing is to be always able to balance taste and health. And in our parlance in foods for Nestle, we use taste and balance as the mantra. On the left, you have a very, very beautiful product inside for Maggi veg atta noodles, which is that when consumers are 25 to 35-year-olds, they actively look for more wholesome options that meet their taste expectations. So it should be tasty, but it should also suffice my health expectations. On the right, and this is an insight, and I obsess about insights when we get into communication campaigns, that a young relationship is very fragile. I was in a young relationship many years ago. I'm sure some of you are today. Young relationships are about discovery. They are about knowing what we believe we know and then still getting surprised every day by things that we discover. If we can match this beauty of the fragile relationship and the insight about discovering new things about each other with the product truth about veg atta noodles, that it is actually as tasty or really delicious while being wholesome veg atta noodles, then you have the beginnings of iconic campaigns. What we have for you on the next slide is the ad that Akshata will play for you, and then we'll talk a little more about it.
बेबी
हाँ
नहीं मैगी
हाँ प्लीज ऑसम मैगी
वेज आटा मैगी
आटा मैगी तुम बताते नहीं तो पता नहीं चलता
हाँ कुछ बातें बता देनी चाहिए
रोड ट्रिप सॉन्ग्स ये क्यों मैं गाऊंगी ना गोवा टू मुंबई याद नहीं है वो कौन सा गाना था
याद है इसीलिए
बुरा गाते हो
बहुत बुरा
अपनों की कुछ बातें सरप्राइज कर जाती हैं, जैसे नई वेज आटा मैगी का ऑसम टेस्ट। तो आओ मैगी बनाएं। नेस्ले, गुड फूड, गुड लाइफ।
I just want to take a minute's pause and talk a little bit about the insight to execution bit, and that's something that a lot of you are interested in. It's difficult to find an insight. In this case, it took time for us to discover this whole aspect about young relationships and to be able to say something about your partner in a young relationship without offending the person. So it took time to find that insight. Once we found the insight, it took even more time and discipline to make sure that we carry it all the way through in execution. So whenever you're designing your own execution, just remember that obsess about finding the insight and then make sure that you have the discipline to take it to execution. Next slide, please, Akshata. There were some comments about how is it that Maggi remains relevant to so many people while being a singularly delicious product. And again, it's about knowing what the consumer is going through today and bringing it to life with an example that's relevant today. In COVID, you have the worst of office, you have the worst of school, you have the worst of college, which is all the good things about friendship and happy moments and socializing are all taking away. And all the bad things about school, which is homework, are all still there. And so you're really, really finding it difficult to go through all day, every day in the monotony. At the same time, the insight was that just a happy bowl of Maggi noodles is a pick me up in my day. We use this simple connection between a human truth and the product truth, and we designed a new campaign that we launched a couple of months back during COVID times, and we'll share it now and then we'll talk about it. Akshita, the video, please.
दिल में जो आया तू तेरी धुन कैसे न सुनूं दिल में जो आया तू तेरी धुन कैसे न सुनूं छीला जाए मेरा भी मैगी 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 हे तू आगे मैं पीछे तेरी डोर मुझे खींचे लव ऐसा ना होगा कहीं मैगी मैगी मैगी
दिल की सुन ली जाए आओ मैगी बनाएं फ्रॉम नेस्ले
Not so much an emotional conversation, but realizing that sometimes consumers and human beings in general need a pick me up in life and everything around them is negative. And that's what the execution on this one was. Next slide, please, Akshita. What do we end up doing in a full year? We do a lot more than just make ads. You can click the animations, please. Like I said, Nestle managers are business managers and Maggi managers are business managers themselves. These are pictures of what we did last year when business operations themselves were becoming a challenge. This was our best ever year when it came to leveraging operations and to keep our factories running. I spent about a third of my time engaging and working closely with technical colleagues in factories. We put out incredible amount of advertising. We did a ton of promotions. And when we were struggling to even keep factories running, even at that time, we put out innovation. What is very, very proud for me personally is that we also use this time to demonstrate our commitment as a brand and as a business to India. We knew that at this time, consumers need a lot more than just their favorite Maggi noodles. So in the initial days of the pandemic, we actually put a video out saying, don't worry, don't panic, Maggi will reach shelves soon. And remember, this is March 2020, where there was a national lockdown and it was very difficult to keep factories running and stocks moving across the country. To just be receptive and to know what the consumer needs is what we did. This inspired us to launch a full campaign. Next slide, please. The campaign was called Desh Ke Liye 2 Minute, a year-long campaign that was aimed to inspire all Indians to take small steps. And really, that's the insight here. You don't have to do big things. There are many people doing many big things. You know, there is Sonu Sood who's ferrying thousands of migrants home. Not everybody can be a Sonu Sood. But you can take small steps. You can take just 2 minutes. And here you see the brand idea of 2 minutes to cook noodles. It takes 2 minutes to make a difference. Do a choti si koshish. Do a choti si koshish for somebody's swasth. Do some sahayata. Spend some time on swachhta. And you can make a difference to somebody's life. We created new advertising and new campaign. Let's not call this one advertising, but more an inspirational piece of communication. We'll show that to you now and then we'll talk about it. Akshita, please.
नमस्ते दादी, कैसी हो?
हाँ ठीक ही हूँ।
आज तो एकदम फ्रेश सब्जी मिली है। और घर में सब ठीक?
आप जैसे लोग हैं ना मदद करने के लिए।
कुछ और चाहिए तो बताना। चलिए।
सुनो, पैसे कितने हुए?
अरे दादी, हम तो आपके बच्चे हैं। अच्छा, चलता हूँ दादी।
जब किसी और की जिंदगी को छू जाएंगी तेरी अच्छाइयाँ दूर तक जाएंगी।
अरे हम भी तो आपके बच्चे हैं ना।
तेरी अच्छाइयाँ दूर तक।
जब आप 2 मिनट ठहर कर किसी के लिए कुछ करते हैं तो देश की उम्मीदों में नए रंग भरते हैं। मैगी में हम भी इस साल करेंगे अपनी तरह से कुछ छोटी कोशिशें। आइए आप भी अपनी तरह से दीजिए 2 मिनट देश के लिए।
फ्रॉम नेस्ले।
Of advertising when it is done using insights, that if you know this idea about it doesn't take much to make a difference, then you can bring that to life using a brand property, which in this case was 2 minutes, And the emotional idea of it is that it doesn't take much. Small gesture is all it takes to bring a smile on the face of a cop who's trying to help out an old lady and her grandson. Next slide, please. What is also important to know, and I use this example to stress this point, that collaboration is at the heart of business success. Some of you ask about the nature of collaboration in the business world. It takes a lot to make things happen. And yes, sometimes there are a few people who are the face of brands, who are the face of companies, who are the face of campaigns. What's going on behind the scenes is hundreds of people who make things happen. Not just people who work for organizations, but also partner agencies. And in this case, for this campaign, there were partners like the India Food Network, there were partners like Google, Facebook, Network 18. There were also recipients, normal Indians, who raised their hand and said, look, you guys are doing so much and we would also like to help. And this beautiful aspect about collaboration is what makes business tick and business successful. I also remember from my own days in the business school that the ability to collaborate is one of the biggest lessons one learns when one is in the business school doing case studies. And please do remember it as you progress to careers in corporate world or entrepreneurship, as the case may be. Next slide, please. We will show you an example of collaboration in communication. And we will show you the piece of advertising first before we talk about the collaboration, because a simple film like the one you're about to see, in this case made for Munch, took 3 months and minimum 200 people before it could see light of day. Akshita, will you play the film, please, and then we'll talk about it.
गरे 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 धने धने रे गा मा धा पा मा गरे 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 धने धने रे मा गरे दिल में कुछ जगह जगह धड़कन से तेज भागा मुड़ मुड़ पीछे देख तू लाखों में है एक मेरे सुर तू भी लेके आ जा एक दांव फेंक तू एक दांव फेंक आ जा एक दांव फेंक
One breath, Shruti.
खुद पे शक हो रहा है, दिल धक 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 हो रहा है. शंकर सर, क्रंच पंच मंच मचा. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Feelings are talking, the heart is the jogging, the battery is charging. Doubt hata sur mila, crunch macha, manch macha, crunch macha, manch macha, crunch macha, punch macha. Jump up and sing, lion like king, not in the ring. Doubt hata sur mila, crunch macha, manch macha, crunch macha, manch macha, crunch macha, punch macha. Social pay trending, the yoga like bending, the full signal sending. Doubt hata sur mila, crunch macha, manch macha, crunch macha, manch macha, crunch macha, punch macha.
Now, of course, this is not an ad, this is a music video. And the reason for doing a music video was, at the time, it was clear that a normal 30-second ad is not going to differentiate Munch from the cluttered space in the chocolate confectionery category. Music video is easy to say, hard to do. You heard a song. Next slide, please. The song is composed by Shankar Ehsaan Loy. The lyrics to the song are written by an extremely talented person in the advertising agency. But she wrote the song in collaboration with 6 other people, including Shankar Ehsaan and Loy. And then the final version was done with Shruti adding her own lyrics while she was doing takes of the song. So eventually it took us 10 hours to record the audio piece of the song. just because we were open to collaborating and writing the lyrics that match the insight. What is the insight? Teenagers want to stand out and they want to make a difference to the world, and they don't want to be seen as children anymore. Simple insight. And then you read the lyrics of the song, that there is a doubt, and teens are not really sure what is it that they will talk about. And to be able to take this insight meant that you had to collaborate with people who understood Hindi lyrics, who understood the meter of the song, who understood rhythm and music, who could then sing the song at the same pace and still deliver the insight. And the only reason why I'm belaboring so much about this song as an example is, please believe that you may have the designation or the authority or the budget or the mandate, but the ability to succeed in life depends on the ability to collaborate with like-minded people around you. Next slide, please. There was we can skip this one, Akshata. Next slide, please. There was a question on culinary skills, and Riti said lack of culinary. Actually, Maggi is a big advocate of culinary skills. And if you see the next slide, we will talk about how cooking is getting transformed. India is a cooking culture, and all of us have more than 3 fresh meals a day. But cooking today is all about the internet. Cooking today is all about food subscribers. Cooking today is all about products like Masala Magic, which some of you may not know. We sold 5 billion servings of this last year. This is a single sachet that is fortified with iron, iodine, vitamin A that you add on top of your dish, and it magically transforms the taste of that dish. So we are very engaged in this world of cooking because we believe that we can be strong allies to this world by bringing not just products and services, but also an inspirational ability in the online world. And that is what we as Maggi want to do more and more. Next slide, please. Consumers are becoming increasingly conscious about sustainable packaging. Yes, they are. And we spotted this actually many years ago. And if you see the next slide, Akshata, Maggi is one of the only brands in the country that is today plastic neutral. What does it mean? We take back from the environment as much tonnage of plastic laminate as we use to pack our products. So if we use 1,000 tons of plastic laminate, we take back physically 1,000 tons of plastic and make sure that it does not find its way to landfills. Our belief also is that managing plastic is a function of consumer education. People like you and me have to learn that plastic is not the enemy. We have to learn to manage plastic correctly. And I want to share with you one example of a piece of communication that we did in a very Maggi way. Next slide, please. Where we try to inspire consumers to have the right behavior. We can skip this one, Akshita. We can go to the comms, please. And if you see the ad, this is a way of nudging consumer behavior, because that's what responsible brands have to do. They have to nudge consumers to make behavior change.
या चल चले ढूंढने वो महफिलें
ऐसी कोई दीवार नहीं जो हमारे इसके बीच आ जाए
है बसी
और ऐसा कोई प्लान नहीं जो इसके लिए ना बदला जाए
अगली बस कब है?
अरे यार ठहर जा इंतजार
अंदर से आवाज आती है थोड़ा ट्राई कर लो फॉरेन ट्रिप पे जाना है तो इंडिया बैग में भर लो कुछ हो जाए अपनी मैगी हम किसी हाल में नहीं छोड़ सकते पर उसका खाली पैकेट वो कहीं भी छोड़ देते हैं थैंकफुली मैगी ने ये खाली पैकेट्स नहीं छोड़े 2019 में जितने मैगी पैक्स हम सबने खरीदे मैगी ने उतने ही खाली प्लास्टिक पैक देश के कोने कोने से कलेक्ट करके सही तरह से इस्तेमाल किए और अब इस छोटी सी शुरुआत को आगे ले जाने में उन्हें हमारा साथ चाहिए करना सिर्फ इतना है कि इस खाली पैकेट को ड्राई वेस्ट वाले ब्लू बिन में डालें ताकि इसे आसानी से कलेक्ट किया जा सके तो अपने फेवरेट 2 मिनट नूडल्स के साथ जुड़कर दे दीजिए 2 मिनट देश की सफाई के नाम
Nestle, good food, good life.
The idea of 2 minutes and then use that to nudge consumer behavior. We do more than just advertising and plastic neutrality. We actually put our hands and hearts behind making a difference. And next slide, please. That's what we spend time doing at Nestle for fun. I was very, very lucky to spend time on the World Ocean Day, helping clean up some beaches. This may not have made a big difference to the beach, but it makes a big difference to the people who participate. And it sends a powerful message on how we can all make a big difference in just 2 minutes. On the right, you have an image. Despite COVID times and not being able to meet personally and physically, we spend time having fun by using the themes of all hands, all hearts, by sharing with each other our stories, by sharing how we would like to be vulnerable with each other sometimes, and making sure that this beautiful thing called an office space is more than just tables and chairs, and our colleagues are the ones that we have the deepest relationships with. I want to spend a couple of minutes now talking to you more about what to expect if you spend 17 years at Nestle working. Next slide, please. You can expect to work on iconic brands. I've had the privilege of working on some of these brands. You will be given early responsibility to lead these brands. Somebody had a question on what can a management trainee do when you're on a brand? Well, a management trainee can do everything. I was a management trainee when we had the opportunity to change the business model of the sugar confectionery business. And it was an incredible learning experience for me to be able to do that. Next slide, please. You can expect to spend a lifetime learning. I've had the pleasure of learning at London Business School, sponsored by Nestle. A lot of my colleagues have spent time at IMD, trying to hone our leadership skills and finding our purpose. We have a world-class learning facility that's exclusive to Nestle in a small town called Vevey, where our global headquarters is. It's called Riverine. We have the best trainers in the world, internal and external to Nestle, that spend time with leaders, helping them grow and develop. These days, most importantly, how to be force for good every day. Last slide, and one of perhaps the most important ones. When you spend a career in Nestle, you spend time with some really extraordinary people, people who are all management trainees at some day, and these are all three people started as management trainees, have gone on to become CEOs and managing directors. All of them are still working for Nestle. I've had the pleasure of working with them directly, and not a day goes by when I thank them for everything that they've taught me. And this is what you can expect if you spend a career at Nestle. So we stop now. We've spent about 35 minutes. We can spend the rest of the time having a conversation and helping answer things that may be more important to you that we may not have covered. Thanks a lot, Akshita, and over to you. You're on mute, Eddie.
Apologies, this happens to me quite often. So thanks a lot for the session, Rajat. I think that you have managed to address most of the queries that came by. However, what I see from the comment section is that people are still hungry for more. So let me then sort of put across some of the questions that have come by. A question from Anushruti. How did you plan to position atta noodles and oats noodles of Maggi? And what is the insight that you used to actually come about with something like this?
Great question. Like I said, it's taste and balance. So we always try and balance these two aspects. The consumer insight in the case of Veg Atta is young consumers who would like to build their fragile relationships by discovering more about each other. And the product truth is that if you discover the taste of Veg Atta, it can be a delightful surprise. And we bring these two things together, and we try and do that in the communication you saw. We have a lot of headroom to do more, and you can look forward to some tasty surprises that also offer more balance in the near future.
Sure. The second question, which is very interesting because I am a kid of the 90s. So Maggi has been an emotion for all of the children when it comes to 1990s. So what about the current generation kids? How do you ensure loyalty with the current generation? The question is by Purva.
Purva, I am a kid of the 80s. So if I was loyal and you are loyal, then hopefully the kids of the Norths are also loyal. On a more serious and fact-based notes, look, food is very personal. And the first experience you have with food is normally the food that your family eats, and your mom eats, and your dad eats, and your elder brother eats. We are very blessed that we have been with Maggi in this country for nearly 40 years now. So generations have grown up on it. I very often get fan letters, and some of those lovely pictures of 3 generations of enjoying Maggi noodles at the same time on the dining table. I'm hoping and praying that a lot of that continues to happen, and I'm relying on people like you to bring the next generation to Maggi, because that's what keeps the brand growing and moving forward.
Thank you, Rajat. What was the inspiration behind launching something like Masala-e-Magic, especially since that there are so many masalas in the market already? And how is it that became a single loved masala brand? The question is by Aishi. Yep.
By Ayushi. Ayushi, thanks a lot. It's great that you know about Masala Magic. Not a lot of folks do. We sell a lot of it, more than 5 billion pieces, like I said. It's really loved by those who use it. The inspiration was that we are really good at spices at Maggi. We really understand that deeply because of our culinary history with Maggi noodles and that little thing you call the taste maker inside. In 2000 or 1999, actually, we were on a consumer safari, as we call it, visiting a homemaker. And she actually gave us this insight that when her kid is fussy about vegetables, she adds a little bit of the Maggi noodle taste maker to his daily sabzi and he thoroughly enjoys it. And it got us to thinking that, if moms have this problem that kids are not really so happy about daily food, and daily food can be boring. I had arar ki dal and aloo ki sabzi at lunch today. I'm sure most of you who are vegetarians like me also had some version of that. It's nice, but it can be quite boring on a daily basis. And we said, look, we know so much about spices and we know so much about creating taste. Can we bring that knowledge to everyday food in India? It was as simple as that. And there you have it. We've used all our knowledge and we've put all that in that little sachet, and we have 5 billion sales after that.
Great. And this is a little different of a question from Nishant. So Maggi is a solid food product. So there is no fear of maybe spillage like carbonated drinks. So is there a reason why maybe we haven't switched to a paper packaging as of yet?
So like I said, the approach in Maggi is to make sure that plastic does not end up in the landfill. Because remember, guys, the problem is not plastic laminate. Plastic is actually a friend because plastic allows you to create shelf life and safety and prevents moisture and allows for easy transportation at a cost that is relatively affordable. So plastic is a great idea, and plastic revolutionized the packaged food industry globally when it came about in packaging. The problem is when you don't handle plastic correctly, when it finds its way on the roadside, when it's littered all over, when it has to go to the landfill. And that is what we have to learn to manage. And that is why you saw the two examples, which is to make sure that you take back as much plastic as you put out, and so to be plastic neutral. We are the only brand in the country. Nestle has the only two brands, so Maggi and KitKat are the only brands that do that. No other FMCG brand does that yet. And the second way is to nudge consumers to look, just when you open the pack, don't throw it around and put it in the bin. Because once you put it in the bin, the chances are very high that it does not get into a landfill. Remember, plastic is not the enemy. And so paper is not the solution because paper is very expensive. Paper will destroy a lot of the trees and that destroys forests and does not give you the shelf life.
That's great, Rajat. So this is a common theme that actually came about when we had opened up the firm. So how is it that we have decided to maybe sell masala magic, bhuna masala, etc. under the Maggi brand umbrella? So is there a logic as to how we go about this with the Cooking Gates portfolio?
Yeah, go back to the purpose that we spoke about. Can we make a difference to the food that you eat today? And can we make that difference by being a force for good? And if the answer to that is yes, we make a difference to the food that you're going to eat today. So not the food that you have on Christmas, on Diwali, or on Eid, but today, which is on a regular given day. And can we do it by being a force for good? And if the answer to those two questions is yes, then we will do it under brand name. If the answer to those two questions is maybe, maybe not, then we will think about it more and maybe not do it.
One very interesting question that came about, I think there is a lot of focus on maybe the Korean culture in general. So the question that sort of came about from Himanshu from IIM Calcutta was that are we doing anything to address the Korean Asian trend?
In a short answer, yes, we are doing. In fact, we have been doing already. I'm sad that you haven't seen those products. Maybe I have to talk to some folks in sales. But we do have products. In general, Korean is a big trend. You're right. We do expect this to not be a short-term trend or a fashionable thing. We expect it to last a while. So yes, we're doing a bit, and we will make sure that those products come to you.
So I think this question actually ties back to the collaboration that you were talking about. How is it that Maggi is available from the peaks of Himalayas to everywhere in the farthest lands of India? How does supply chain sort of get involved here?
Thanks a lot for that question. I think it's Apeksha's question. That's a great question. Sometimes, and like I said, there are people who are the face of the brand, but behind the brand, you have, in this case, thousands of people who are working hard every day, despite the worst of the COVID, to make sure that the product reaches shelf. Nestle has been in the country more than 100 years, and we are very proud of the fact that we have deep roots with partners across the length and breadth of the country. I have worked in sales and I know the value of those relationships that we have. And it is on the back of those relationships and a very, very committed Nestle sales team that we are able to create Maggi make Maggi available on the highest motorable road. You can actually buy it and have a hot Maggi well beyond the Pyongyang Lake in Ladakh. You can have it in the middle of the Thar Desert. If there is a small hamlet and there are 100 people living there, you're bound to find Maggi noodles there. It's because we have deep relationships and deep roots in this country, and we've been around a long time, and we value a lot those relationships.
Thank you, Rajat. This is a slightly technical question. So it's from Sai Sandeep. How accurately can we know whether what a consumer is feeling about a brand before adding that into your flavor portfolio?
How accurately can we know what we are feeling? Let's start with that. Forget somebody else. It's extremely difficult for human beings to articulate how they are feeling. It's extremely difficult. So how do brand teams do it? We try and triangulate 2-3 things. So we listen a lot to consumers. We spend time, I spend time, our marketing teams in Maggi spend time on listening to consumers. What are they saying? How are they expressing themselves? Then we look at points of data. We look at what's selling more, what's selling less. We try and spend time on social media. What are the Instagram trends? Why is everybody talking about Korean? What is the underlying insight behind this conversation around Korean? Is it about Korean or is it about fashion? Or is it about trying to stand out? The third thing we do is make choices. So, okay, there's a lot of this going on and we're hearing so much. Which of this can I address that matches, go back to our purpose, that matches? Is this going to help us make a difference to the food that we cook every day? And is this going to help us be a force for good? And if the answer to that is yes, we will do it.
Questions are really pouring in, Rajat. So the next one is how do we become more cognizant about what goes on in our ingredients? So by reading back of packs, etc. So how is Nestle sort of focusing on that bit?
Great question. We work directly with farmers. You will be surprised to know, I'm sure most of you would not know that Maggi noodles uses thousands of tons of spices every year. 96% of those spices, and remember, we're talking about thousands of tons, 96% of those we can trace back to the plot of farm that they were grown in. That's how closely we work with farmers. So depending on the batch of the chili, our agri-services team can tell you that chili that you have used in that batch came from that plot in that district in Barmer in Rajasthan that is grown by that farmer, and that farmer has been supplying chili to us for the last 15 years. That's how closely we are linked. And it's not just true of spices. We have our own milk district in a small village a small town, not a village, called Moga in Punjab. We've had the milk district now for more than 70 years, where we collect fresh milk, thousands of liters of fresh milk every day. And we know down to the buffalo, we know the milk. We know the name of the buffalo that the milk came from. And I'm not kidding, and this is not a joke. We have that kind of relationship in the commodities we buy. Because at the end, what you eat in Maggi noodles is dictated only by 3 things. The ingredients we buy, the culinary magic we bring to that in our factories, and the freshness it has on shelf. That is all it takes. So we are very, very committed to this part of our value chain.
Thank you, Rajat. I think I'll be very keen to know the name of the buffalo. So another very interesting question that comes about from Ria, which is more about the future for Maggi. So we already have such a strong brand. So what is it that we do to improve it further?
Great question. My wife often asks me the question, what do you have to do? It's such a strong brand and people love noodles. So what do you do so much? Why do you spend 12 hours a day working? And sometimes you have to work 12 hours a day working just to keep the love and to make sure that people keep eating. And that's the reality of working on iconic brands, that sometimes your mandate is to protect and preserve as much it is to nurture and grow. And remember, I spoke about short term and long term. Protect and preserve in the short term, nurture and grow the brand in the long term. How do we do that? For the fear of sounding like a broken record, go back to our purpose. If the action we take today is going to help somebody improve quality of life, if our brand is going to be a force for good as a result of that action, let's take that action. And that's such a simple but powerful yardstick, and that keeps growing the brand. And you saw some of the rankings that I shared early. That's how the brands become more and more powerful and more loved every day. There is no limit to how powerful a brand can become.
Sure. So, taking this thread a little further, Rajat, one of the questions from Unnati was, how does Nestle in its marketing campaigns balance the iconic feel of the brand and yet bring in freshness?
Great question. And actually, it's one of the biggest challenges we have. When brands have such a big historical context, Maggi has, Nescafe has, Kit Kat has, Munch has, in India, it's important to be connected to the past. And at the same time, it's important to be taking the brand to the future. So we don't have to sever our connection to the past. We have to have a connection with the past. And that's why you see the insistence on the Maggi jingle in most of our communication. That's our link with the past. The jingle hasn't changed. In 30 years, the jingle hasn't changed. The idea of 2 minutes hasn't changed in 35 years. Those are our connections with the past. Still talking about the taste of the product is our connection with the past. We haven't changed that. And the ability to take that connection and still talk about Instagram and to still talk about Reels and to still talk about India-England cricket test match and to still talk about Desh ke liye 2 minute in COVID times. That's the beauty of the balance that iconic brands keep. And I think Maggi is one of the few brands that does it quite well.
So, question from Kaustubh. So he feels that Maggi lovers generally find themselves on either side of the fence, either having the noodles dry or having a ramen soupy Maggi. So have you ever considered a product extension like this?
At last count, there are 159 ways of having Maggi. This is the last count. Before we take it into the count, we want to see at least 100 examples of that. So imagine, if I took every one example, we would have thousands of them. And that's great. I mean, it just goes to show, and one of my favorite beliefs about Maggi, in particular as one of our iconic brands, is that the brand really belongs to consumers. So these are great inspirations. We look at these inspirations very strongly, but we're very happy and we celebrate all these experiments that keep happening with Maggi all the time.
So one question for Rajat as a person. So it is from Devrup. So what are the key qualities that have helped you endure the challenges across 6 categories and 7 brands that you have taken up in Nestle?
I don't know so much about qualities. I mean, I'm sure a lot of folks have many qualities. I like to think of it as a belief system. My personal belief is show up in the morning and do the best you're going to do today. On the job that is given to you today. That has been my belief system for as many years as I have worked. It doesn't really matter the size of the brand, whether people know it, not know it, how much advertising budget I have. Just show up and do the best you can today. That's a core part of my belief system. The second part of my belief system that has really helped me a lot is when you need help, ask. Don't be shy of reaching out to somebody and saying, look, I have a problem. It doesn't seem like I can solve the problem on my own. Can you please help me? It is remarkable how much help you get. And it is remarkable how much people are willing to lend their hand in solving that problem for you. So those things really help, which is just do my best today and ask for help when I need it.
So I think we will take 2 more questions and mostly about Rajat as a person. So how have you seen yourself evolve in the 16 plus 17 odd years that you've had with Nestle?
How have I seen? So what has not changed? What has not changed is still when I start my day, I still start as excited as I was 17 years ago. Most days, not all days. Some days I have a smack on my head and I think, God, this is a terrible day. Most days I start with sort of a smile on my face and I'm excited about what I'm going to achieve that day. That hasn't changed. How I've evolved a lot as a person when it comes to my own self-awareness. At Nestle, we have a big impetus and a big stress on knowing ourselves. And I think that has helped me a lot. I have evolved a lot. I know I know how I like to address a problem. I know what motivates me, what demotivates me. I know what inspires me. I know what really annoys me. I know that now. So I try and avoid some of that, especially in the second half of my day. I avoid what annoys me. That I have evolved in self-awareness like that. I have also evolved in knowing that sometimes leadership is just about following. And it is counterintuitive, but it really helps to sometimes just shut up and listen to everybody around you. And in my current role as leader of a big business, that really helps me, which is I don't have to have all the answers, and sometimes I can just listen, and smart folks like Akshata have more answers than I have. So that's how I go.
Thanks for the flattery, Rajat. But so moving on to the next question. So we've had a lot of questions sort of talking about the Maggie crisis. So maybe at that point in time, can you, maybe talk about what was going on through your head as a person who was on the ground at that point in time in sales?
Well, there were two emotions. There was one emotion that was a lot of anger, and I think a lot of Nestle folks at the time shared that emotion, because in our hearts we knew that there's nothing wrong with the product. It's 100% safe, and but we were just angry at what was happening. We were angry at the number of questions our families were asking us, our friends were asking us. I was in sales, so I mean, most retailers were supportive, but there were some who were not so supportive and who were blaming us, and so it was anger. That was one part of the emotion. The second part of the emotion was a conversation I remember having with our CEO at the time. He was in the market, and we were spending some time in trade, and he said, "Look, you worked in Maggie, so how do you feel? What do you want to do?" And we had announced our recall, and we were taking back stock, and my instinctive answer was that, "Sir, I want to build back every last piece of it, and that's what I want to do." And I was in sales, and there was no plan for me to work in Maggie, and the plan for me was completely something else. As Akshat knows, I was never meant to be the head of Maggie business. But luck, as luck would have it, that prophecy has come true. I was given the joyful task of taking it back to where we were. So going back to the question, the emotion was anger, and the emotion was belief that we were going to build it back up.
So the last question is a lot more about Rajat, about Nestle, and sort of how it all brings together. Being with one organization for the entirety of your career and sticking to that, I think it's unheard of, possibly in my generation at least. So, what made you sort of stick on for such a long time?
And that's a great question. I've had a lot of practice answering the question. So I've been here 17 years. I get a question every couple of years, as you can imagine. In my belief, in all these years, seeing how people grow in Nestle in general, I think people leave when one of two things is missing. So either the work that you're doing is not exciting enough, and that's why people leave. So if you're bored with what you're doing, if you don't think your work has impact, if you don't think your work makes a difference, then people leave. I also think people leave when the boss you're working with is not inspiring you anymore. I've been very lucky that on these two counts, I got to join a company that did not give me these reasons. Every day, and that's why the opening slide was never a dull day in the life of a management trainee. It has never been a dull day. Every day that I wake up, there is either a big challenge or a big mess or a big problem or a big opportunity or a lot of this combined. And so it's never a dull day, and that's why there is always the belief that I can make a difference. Second, I've had the absolute pleasure, and most of us have had that in Nestle, to work with extraordinary bosses and people who inspire us every day when they come to work. By the kind of people they are, their ethical compass, their integrity, the way they look at the world, their skill at marketing, the skill at business. So I've always worked with bosses who've been so far ahead of me and who've taught me so much every day that I have not felt the reason to look out. And yeah, as you can see, I've had practice answering the question.
I love how you still address yourself as a management trainee, Rajat. So I think that sort of speaks loads about how you constantly want to learn. Anyway, I think we are just 3 minutes short, and maybe I will take this time to thank you for being a part of this session and sharing your insights.
Thanks a lot, Akshata. Absolute pleasure and all the best to everybody. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rajat. Bye bye. Take care. So, thanks everyone for joining in, and we'll be back with more such sessions. And looking forward to seeing you all again. Thanks.